Hello there everybody, this is a bit of a different video than usual. In this I'm going to cover the 5 principles of civilizational rebirth. Now I'm doing this because, as I said before, I'm in the process of building an area outside of this YouTube page where people can gather together, chat, they can look at some pieces of mine that are too spicy for YouTube. And yes, on this site, which I'm populating as we speak, so there's plenty of content for people to get their teeth into, I will remove this screen and my full regalia. Richard will be seen as he truly is in the flesh. Now, why I want to do this is because what I'd really like to manifest is a sense of community that can aid us in improving ourselves personally and collectively. I believe this is so important because many of us feel we're on the wrong track in the Western world. Very few people think a positive future is coming. However, I don't think we have to be constantly negative. I do believe rebirth is possible, and that will mean that we have to hark back to some of our traditional ways of life that got us in the strong position we found ourselves in many years ago. Yet while taking the wisdom of old, I think that we can add to that the vibrancy of the new as well. But anyway, more information will come soon on this area I've been building, and there will be a small paywall, probably about the price of a cup of coffee per month. But back to the topic of today. Why am I speaking about civilizational rebirth? Well, the answer to that is I see a lot of solutions coming from the right that, to me, aren't that well thought through. Case in point, some people say that integration is the key. It doesn't matter where somebody's from, as long as they integrate into British values, they're all good. Despite figures in the modern Tory party even saying this, it's obvious that this isn't going to work. It may work 20 years ago, but now there are just far too many people that have come here. And on top of that, what do we even think British values are now? The political, economic and media mainstream would say that British values are tolerance, inclusion and equality. Of course, they're not British values, they're progressive left-wing values. But that goes to show the dominance of globalism. So while we're losing touch with our own values anyway, we've also seen state multiculturalism create enclaves within Britain of people who don't want to integrate, who want to maintain their ways of life and are very aggressive about it now. Many are now aware that integration is unworkable and are touting remigration instead, but I've always felt that this is impractical too. Now, I know Sweden has mooted remigration recently, even offering thousands of dollars to send migrants back home. Now, I hope I'm wrong about this, but it seems to me that none of these immigrants are really going to go home. After all, as much as we hear about how their home countries are amazing and Europe is toxic and far right and so forth, we know that people vote with their feet. That's why they're here in the first place. Even if you're being offered a big lump sum, why would you leave a safe and orderly first world country where you can get that sum in benefits anyway to go back to a third world country which is violent and dangerous? This means if remigration is to be serious, it's going to have to be forced repatriation. That is going to be very unpopular with everybody on the political spectrum other than the hard right. Now, I know Keir Starmer only won because the right-wing vote was split and many people didn't bother to vote. However, he still got enough votes to get a major majority. That shows that there are a lot of people that are left-wing in Great Britain. And every single one of those people, along with the media and economic class, is going to scream bloody murder over a policy like this. Further to that, many who lean right, the Conservatives, the Libertarians and so on, may agree in spirit but not in practice. And even if it was possible, we have to remember we live in a globalized world now. That means if you are sending people back to India and Pakistan as well as the nations in Africa, we have to remember we need to make trade deals with these people. Are they going to play ball if we've sent a lot of their people back? We also have to remember that many migrants have come over here because birth rates are so low in the Western world. Henceforth, there's going to be a massive gap in the economy because of the system we've built. And finally, any Western nation could not do this alone. The rest of the global power structure would gang up on any nation that stepped out of the globalist paradigm. So collectively, all of this brings me to the first principle of civilizational rebirth. We have to deal with things at root. That's not economics or politics, that's the self. We have to change how we think about life. In essence, we have to move away from self-centered materialistic modernity and back to a sense of duty to ourselves, to our nation and our tradition. After all, mass immigration, woke ideology, cultural erosion, all of this has occurred under the premiership of the liberal ideology, a liberal ideology which promises so much glitz and glamour and money and fun in the short term that leads to long-term decay. Yet while things are still relatively stable, people don't tend to turn away from a path of least resistance. They only turn away to something new when they realize where they are is unstable. However, that sense of instability is growing all around us, and at that point, there will be an opportunity to reawaken that ancient wisdom for a new way of life. That new way of life must prize the role of men and women and the family. This is because that creates solid birth rates, which recreates the power in the nation. Another great gift of liberalism has been to destroy birth rates in the Western world. This has been done by telling women that their ultimate purpose is to be a feminist, to compete with men, while telling men that their ultimate purpose, well, there isn't one, so just seek pleasure. This leads me to the third principle, and that's that we need to see the return of the meta-narrative. The liberal world has ultimately destroyed that. Everything today is scientific, self-centered, rooted around the individual mind. As usual, this offers short-term benefits, such as the freedom of the individual to do what they want and think what they like. However, in the long run, it destroys a society because we can't agree on what truth is anymore. This is why every civilization has an underlying spiritual symbology which acts as its foundation. It's such a meta-narrative that builds the meta-truths that moderate and permeate the moral, scientific and spiritual lives of the individual as well as the whole. This ensures that people are singing from, literally and metaphorically, the same hymn sheet. Remove that and you get what we've got now, multiculturalism, where a nation's unique and divine culture is removed in favour of cultural relativism, which undermines everything. Essentially, it's just liberalism. A re-anchoring back into our spiritual symbology with a new vibrancy is the only method by which we can stand up to liberalism and globalism along with its power, which is money. Now, if you've got this far in the video, some people may assume that what I'm calling for here is some form of right-wing revolution. That's not actually the case. What I'm really calling for is the return of our ancient tradition that was taken over by liberalism. Some people put that back at the beginning of Tony Blair when he took over. Some people back as far as the end of the Second World War. Some people go far as back as Descartes. Yet wherever you want to place the beginning of liberalism, I'm not so fussed about left or right or winning elections. What matters to me is tradition taking over liberalism as the core ideology personally, spiritually and collectively. After all, liberalism is so elusive and dominant today because it permeates both the left and right wings of politics. That's why we need something bigger than our present political spectrum to effectively challenge it. Now, this sort of change doesn't come overnight. It takes time for the culture to change, for the human heart to change. And that leads me to the final point, and that's that what's needed is a positive vision that people feel they can take part in and integrate themselves into. This is one of the great flaws of liberalism. Increasingly, people don't feel involved in the modern world. They feel it's for a rich elite. They don't feel listened to. They feel their country's slipping away from them. And the only people that seem to be speaking about politics are left-wing liberals who, again, are just part of the media system. Yet I believe this change occurs in each of us in a sort of inner spiritual revolution which the materialistic liberal world cannot impact. In practical terms, this means embracing physical health, a sense of inner vitality, embracing spiritual calm in the face of chaos, and of course a faith in the ancient wisdom that has guided us for a great deal of time but's only been forgotten. That can take us through the storms of the modern day into a better tomorrow. Now, as I say, it's these sort of ideas and themes and the personal and collective change which will feature more in the exclusive area I'm building at the moment. Now, that should be completed hopefully in a couple of weeks, certainly by the end of the year, but in the meantime, do let me know what you think down below and do consider subscribing to the channel.